All right, everyone. It's the voice of college football. We're talking week 10 on a Friday night. McD Sports 4 on the line. Good to see you. Good to see you and a few others. Uh, as I apologize many times for the late notification, it is what it is. Don't always know when I'm going to be going on live. That's going to be one of my off-season objectives of sorts would be to determine when I can be live on a regular basis. So that will be my objective. Hope you guys are doing well. I've looked over the week 10 schedule, as I'm sure you have many times. It's nothing crazy good at all. Georgia, Florida is certainly the headliner, and a couple Pac 12 games that are huge, basically within the Pac 12, although Oregon does have that shot at the college football playoff, and Utah to a lesser extent. Utah taking on at Washington in Seattle, USC hosting Oregon. Again, Georgia, Florida would be the headliner next week. Let's not look ahead, and I am already Alabama, LSU, Penn State, Minnesota, and others. But this week, a couple really good ones, and I'm sure that there will be some other games that will most likely, just in terms of the games on the field, will top the marquee matchups. And a huge one in the ACC Coastal with North Carolina and Virginia currently tied for the first place lead in the ACC Coastal at 3-2, going at it in Chapel Hill. All right, we got a call in here, so we'll take it. And this may not work too well with my mic configuration here. Let's see. We got Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, hang on. Let's see if I can get you on here. Hang on. All right, DeAndre, go at it.
Oh, what's going on? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, man?
Good, good. Ready for tomorrow. Ready for tomorrow.
What games do you like?
Great games.
What games are the great games? I'm missing the great games. I see a couple really good matchups, but not too many.
Well, you know what, Mark? And I'm gonna be honest with you. You know, Georgia and Florida is probably the game that everybody's looking at.
Sure.
But like most people in the '90s and '80s, growing up watching Florida State and Miami, that got more appeal than Georgia and Florida.
It's got more appeal tomorrow.
Yeah, not because Georgia and Florida is the more important game.
Absolutely.
But I think everybody's still stuck in in our age group is stuck on Miami, Florida State. Only reason why I say that is because if you grew up in the 80s and 90s, that's what you used to seeing. And think about it, Florida, Georgia really hasn't been a really good game. I mean, to me, Florida in my lifetime has dominated that series when it became noticeable in the 90s and 2000s. But I don't really remember that game being big in the 80s growing up. I don't know why, but I don't really remember that being a great game in the 80s, like Florida and Miami, or for any type of national attention. When Tebow was there and Spurrier was there, it seemed like Florida dominated that series. So
they did.
That's why I say, don't catch my eye like that.
But if you're going to go all the way back to the 80s and 90s for Florida State and Miami, why go all the way back to the mid-2000s for Florida, Georgia? If you're going to cite an example of Florida State Miami being a better series, and you got to go back to the 90s, the mid to early 90s, then why are we going back to 12 or 13 years ago to cite the Florida-Georgia domination by the Gators? You follow me?
The Gators, Florida to me has always dominated that series. It hasn't really been a great series. I mean, I know that one time that Georgia ran on the field and said, "Hey, we're number one," or whatever they did. But to me, Georgia's always been a disappointment on the national scene. Not saying they're not a great program. I'm just saying to me they have been a disappointment on the national scene. Where Florida State, and Miami has since I've been young has been on the scene.
Well, Georgia's won the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's true. But how many Florida won before that? Like 10 in a row? I mean, I'm joking, but I really don't know.
How about 3 in a row?
3 in a row? Okay.
I'm looking at them right
we're gonna
now.
see.
It's been pretty even for quite a long time. If somebody asked me, Mark, you're only going to watch one game tomorrow, what game are you going to watch? I don't even consider Florida State Miami. I know there's still decent athletes on the field. They're still okay teams. They're not really good teams at all. They're like top 45 or 50 teams in the nation. That's down the list, and that's down the list in a bad week of college football. Georgia Florida is going to be the game I'm going to watch first and foremost, above anything else. Best teams, best athletes, best rivalry for this year. And then USC and Oregon would be my second choice. And then Utah and Washington would be my third choice. And then maybe Florida State and Miami. I would actually rather see the North Carolina Virginia game, although it's on the ACC network. I won't be able to see it. There are no good games in the Big Ten tomorrow. And I'm trying to think, there might be a game or two that's fairly interesting in the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State is playing TCU. Iowa State and Oklahoma might be okay games.
Let me ask you a question, Mark.
Yep.
I've been listening to a couple of the national broadcasts. So, do you think that how do I want to put it? That Clemson and Alabama will be 4 and 5 when the polls come out this coming up Tuesday?
I think that LSU is going to be 1. Ohio State is going to be 2, I believe. I don't know what goes through that. People ask me to predict what other people are going to select, and I really don't. I kind of don't care. I know that what they select matters and mine doesn't. But if they go by resume, and they're supposed to go by resume for the most part, and then a little bit of eye test, LSU's got the best resume, and Ohio State looks the best. But Clemson and Alabama obviously have been the best. Who am I missing? Penn State's in there. I would think that they're going to rank them LSU 1, Ohio State 2, Alabama 3, Clemson 4. Who am I missing? Penn State 5?
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing a lot of people say that this is coming from the national broadcast. I hear a lot of people say Penn State will probably be 4, and then Clemson and Alabama 5 and 6, or Clemson out the top 4, because all those other teams got to play each other.
What 3 teams are going to be in front of Penn State?
Ohio State, LSU, and who else is undefeated? Alabama, I believe.
Oh, I thought you said Alabama and Clemson would be 4 and 5. Okay, yeah, Clemson at 3. Okay. I've got Clemson, I've got Penn State at number 3. Penn State, I believe, has got a better resume than Alabama and Clemson.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I meant to say that. You got Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, and Penn State. They're supposed to be in the top 4. Clemson might be the one that's at 5th. I apologize for that. And Alabama's supposed to be 4, and Clemson's supposed to be 5th when the polls start. So, but it's going to be interesting. What I want to see, Mark, I want total chaos.
Oh, I would love it.
I want to see Minnesota beat Penn State in 2 weeks, and then win out, and then have to beat Ohio State. I would like to see where I guess that would be a impressive resume, but boy, could you imagine Minnesota in the national championship game?
That'd be great.
And they've been there since like 50.
So I want to see now, of course, if Minnesota goes undefeated and they just beat Iowa, Wisconsin, and Ohio State and Penn State, it would be insane if they were left out of the playoff. If Minnesota goes 11-1, loses a respectable game to a Wisconsin, Iowa, Penn State, beats Ohio State or Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, and Minnesota doesn't make it at 12-1, then you're going to hear me go off for a week about it, because that's going to completely point to bias and preseason perception ruling. If a Minnesota team at 12-1 doesn't get to the college football playoff, unless there can't even be as many enough undefeated teams to keep them out. It would just make no sense. But I could see it happening. because they're not supposed to be good.
You know what, though? And I hear a lot of people answer this question, too. What if LSU beat Alabama, and LSU wins out all the rest of their games, and Alabama's a one-loss team? Will Alabama still somehow get in there? Like, let's say over a one-loss Minnesota team that might, let's say like Minnesota wins the big 10 up with one loss. Will they get in over Minnesota?
I will wear out my voice screaming and ranting and raving for a week if that happens. If Minnesota goes 12-1, wins the Big Ten championship, and however it happens that they lost a game to somebody, it would be Penn State, Iowa, or Wisconsin, and beats the other ones, plus Ohio State or Penn State in the Big Ten championship game with all those quality wins, and as a conference champion, gets left out in favor of an Alabama team that does not get to the SEC championship, that played Duke in the non-conference, and whose best wins would be against who? If they lost to LSU, Alabama would have beaten Auburn, would be their best win by far, and Texas A&M would be their second best win, and Tennessee or Mississippi State or Ole Miss would be their third best win against the Minnesota team that just beat Wisconsin, Iowa, Ohio State, maybe Penn State. That would be nuts. That would be crazy.
Let me ask you this. Do you see any way that Oklahoma gets back in there?
Well, sure. Oklahoma's got one loss. The Pac-12 winner is going to have to work hard to get in there. And yeah, I can certainly see a lot of chaos in the Pac-12 more than any other conference, don't you think? Utah still has to play Washington. Oregon still has to play some tough games. There still has to be a conference championship game.
Right.
So,
like, if you Oregon, Oklahoma, and Clemson up against each other as far as resumes, and I really haven't studied Oregon's schedule. I know they probably play some pretty good teams in there because they play USC this coming up week.
Yeah.
But if Texas keeps losing, what's Oklahoma's best win compared to Clemson?
Oklahoma's best win is going to be either Baylor or Iowa State. And they will have to beat them twice. They will have to beat one of them twice, and it's most likely going to be Baylor.
Right.
So I don't think anything of Baylor right now. I think Matt Rule's doing an exceptional job, but they're not that good. They just barely beat West Virginia last night by 3 points at home. They're, maybe the 25th or 30th best team in the country. So, yeah, your Clemson boys are going to be okay. But with one loss, it would be interesting to see what gets decided there. But I just can't see them losing.
Yeah, I don't see them losing either. I mean, South Carolina might get them at the end of the year, but they got 2 weeks to get up for that game. And NC State, on the local area, I know you don't get a lot of ACC stuff, but NC State is beat up really bad. Like, I know Wake Forest is a 7.5-point favorite, but I'm not gonna tell anybody to go bet on that game. But Wake Forest is a smaller school, but Wake Forest might run them out the building tomorrow.
You think?
Like, by 21, 24. Oh yeah, they're in trouble. I don't know who's starting at quarterback tomorrow for them. And they're playing a bunch of freshmen. Freshmen, maybe next year or 2 years from now they're gonna be really, really good. But right now, NC State is in trouble tomorrow versus Wake Forest. I'm not saying Wake Forest is gonna beat them by 20 points. Wake Forest is a smaller school, but they have a lot of injuries, and it's gonna be they're gonna be in some trouble. So we're gonna see, man. Another game that interests me, and I know this sounds crazy, but I keep up with Illinois, and I want to see them beat Rutgers. I want to see them win out, and I know they ain't gonna win out, but get to that 6th win to see if Lubbock can turn that program around. Because sometimes I sit up there and look at some of these players, and all of them all gathered at one school. I know with this new rule coming out about getting paid for your likeness is going to change a lot of things. But Illinois, I'm like, why don't you go there? And I hear their facilities are terrible, but Lubbock is trying to do his best to bring that program up. And if he can get into a bowl, and he played Michigan pretty good, I mean, I think they really have a good chance to beat Rutgers more than by 22 points and getting that 6th win somewhere for them to get to a bowl this year. And I think that'd be an amazing thing for Lovie Smith to do that Illinois with all the lack of facilities that I hear they got. Because I heard it, their facilities are just as bad as Vanderbilt is, and that's kind of amazing with it being a state school and not privately funded. So now I'm kind of shocked about that. I mean, I don't know how their base is, but it's in one of the biggest. It's by Chicago, the 3rd biggest city in the country. So you would think that we'll be getting more money going to that particular school. But I heard like a lot of the Chicago people are more Notre Dame fans than they are Illinois fans. So maybe that's what part of it is. So, but we'll see. Now, I'll be watching Georgia and Florida. Are you live streaming it tomorrow? Are you going to be on the
Heck yeah.
Are you going to be doing a
I'm going to be cranking out the content like nobody's business.
As I hear that Georgia is a 6.5 favorite.
Oh, it's down to about 3.5 or 4.
It's down to 4. Oh, wow. It's going to be interesting because Georgia struggles at receiver, and the Florida can load the box. I mean, they got a good chance. I don't know how good Georgia defense is, but I got a buddy. He's a Georgia fan, and he told me that if Georgia played Clemson last year in the championship game, that they would have beat them. I said, but Georgia had less sacks than anybody else did in the country last year, and that's amazing. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the SEC, but I said that's amazing because Georgia has so much talent on their defense, and they didn't have that many sacks last year. So I said, if Alabama didn't sack, what you think Clemson offensive line would have done to Georgia defensive line last year? And I said, also y'all got beat by Texas, man. I mean, I'm just amazed, man, about how much Georgia fans say about Clemson, but they haven't showed up on a big screen since 1981. And they beat Oklahoma last year, but 2 years ago. But that's about it. Every time you expect for them to push through, they don't. And I'll let you go on this one too, Mark. Who was it? Florida State and Illinois. I took them to win more games. I already broke that mark. Now. Illinois is at Florida State. So I'm gonna have some pretty nice money. I bet TCU to win the what is that called? The Big 12, but I don't think that's gonna happen there. I mean, I think there's too many other teams.
Okay, DeAndre, you lost me. You picked Illinois to go the over, and Florida State.
Yeah, the over.
And Florida State what?
To go the over.
Florida State's going to go the over?
Their season total.
What's the over?
Their total was 5.
5?
They're both 5.
Florida State's was 5?
Yep.
Who's making that line? That was awful. I wish I would have seen that. 5?
Yep, it was 5.
They got 2 automatic wins playing Louisiana Monroe and Alabama State. Plus they got Syracuse.
Hey. But remember, Syracuse was ranked in the beginning of the year.
Well, I didn't rank them. I certainly didn't rank them. I said they'd go 6-6. All right, DeAndre, appreciate the call. Appreciate the contribution as well. Thank you so much, man.
All right, man. Take care.
Have a good one. Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Rogers, how you doing, buddy? It's Brent 601.
I'm good. Brent, how are you? What's going on?
Hey, man. Well, first off, I just want to say, you can tell in my comments, I've been following you and Uncle Lou for a while, and obviously I'm a buddy of Pigskin Pete. We went to the Florida State game this past year with him and Bobby Durkins, and man, I cannot thank you guys enough for what y'all do. You get me through the off season, you get me through the season. I follow you guys. I listen to y'all when I'm at the gym, get my swole on. I listen to y'all at work on break, and man, what you guys, especially you, like your professionalism. I love you guys. How you all have your different styles. So I just really want to thank you for what you do, even though it's your passion. I just wanted to thank you for what you do very much, sir.
I appreciate that. That is great. And those guys do an exceptional job. And I made the same comment the other day when somebody mentioned some other YouTubers that as long as people come and they do their very best and they try to study up and try to know what they're talking about and then just insert their own energy and their own personality, I'm all for it because we don't all want to be the same. So everybody's got their different style and their different approach.
Sure.
That's great.
That's great. Yeah, I think what's that guy from oh man. I don't know if you follow College Football Nerds, but they're a buddy that's the Auburn fan too. Yeah. You definitely remind me of him. You're more of the ESPN analyst guy, and I appreciate all different styles.
I've caught a little bit of those guys.
They're good, man. I love the analytics because there's obviously the eye test, but it's cool to see the analytics and the eye test side.
Yeah. So I people ask me all the time who I watch, and I really don't watch anyone, and that's not a slight to anyone. I just don't have time and don't really find that it's that productive. But I just don't really have the time. I'm just doing this all the time. In addition to everything else I've got it going in life. So I don't sit there and consume, but if I see that Uncle Lou's got a video on, I may skim through it real quick and try to catch the highlights and so forth a little bit here and there. But those college football
and all the people you have on, man, I have no idea why ESPN does not have you as an analyst already, man. You're killing it. You get people from every single college fan base. It's amazing what you do. I really appreciate your hard work.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And the encouragement, it goes a long way, believe me. When I'm slamming through 6 or 8 videos in a day after I've worked 10 hours at the regular job and I'm knocking stuff out at 4 o'clock in the morning, those kind of comments keep me going.
I heard you're the hardest working guy in college football.
Well, somebody said it. I didn't.
This, though, man, you won't believe this. As a Clemson fan, I'm actually going to the Michigan-Ohio State game this year. We got lower bowl tickets from one of my good buddies, and I will actually be there. I don't have many videos on my channel or anything, but I'll definitely live stream or post some pictures on there, man. I can't wait. Especially if Michigan can win out from here on out. I think it'll be a very intense game with Michigan, Ohio State, man. So
you've got a channel too?
Well, I don't really I don't do anything like what you do. I have a couple random videos on there. But I will post that Michigan, Ohio State game on there, maybe even live stream from there because this is a once in a lifetime bucket list game I've always wanted to go to. And it just so happens I got a buddy who's a diehard Michigan fan. And I know you're an Ohio State guy, but still, it's just being in that stadium, for the big game will be, it's a lifetime moment. A lot of people don't get to experience.
So it's surprising to a lot of people that, see, I haven't lived in Ohio except for about a year and a half between jobs. I haven't lived in Ohio since 1994. So it's been a long, long time. Actually, in my first TV job, I was offered 1 year to go to the Ohio State game, free tickets to the Ohio State Michigan game. And guess what I said? No, thanks.
Please tell me you didn't say no.
I said absolutely. I said no. I don't like going to the games.
Oh,
I understand it's
I
an
hear you. That's okay.
experience. I
That's okay.
can't see the game. It drives me nuts. I'd rather be sitting here watching Ohio State, Michigan. And you guys should get this from watching me. I want to see Ohio State, Michigan play, but as soon as they even start to think about going to break, boom, I'm clicking to Florida State, or I'm clicking to
Right.
fill in the blank.
Right.
And I'm just clicking.
From the comfort of your home.
And I'm trying to watch a bunch of games at the same time. And
I hear you.
I want to
You
see the
also deal with
replays and the whole
traffic
thing.
and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly why I do not go to every Clemson game. I got my Clemson buddies. We go to one major game a year. And so the rest, like, yeah, nowadays it's easier to sit at home. You know, you can have your own tailgate food, and you can watch all the games from home. You don't have to deal with traffic and parking and, you know, spend all that money. But, yeah, once a year I like to go to a new stadium. So it'll be a lifetime experience for me. But I'm looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, that should be awesome.
Have you ever been in the big house at all?
I have not.
I hear it's the second biggest stadium in the world. I don't know if that's true.
To some soccer stadium. Are you talking about in terms of capacity, or are you talking about the size of the stadium?
Capacity. I hear capacity-wise, there's a stadium bigger in North Korea, but I hear they have to go or they'll get their heads chopped off.
When I was growing up, well, that would not be quite worth it. But when I was growing up, Ohio State was already they were only in about the 85,000 range, and for most of my days growing up, Ohio State was in the 89 to 90,000 range, and Michigan at that point was already around 106. I think Ohio State's very close to Michigan right now. They're like 112 and 111. They're putting 111 in the shoe now over the last few years. I think Michigan's about 112. Penn State's over 100. Tennessee's over 100. What, Alabama's over 100, right? They're barely over 100.
I believe so. You're right.
And is there anybody else over 100? I think there's 5 schools. Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, Alabama. I think that's about it. The Rose Bowl used to be over 100, but they obviously never put 100,000 people in that thing for a USC or UCLA game. But yeah, that's how it stacks up right now. Yep.
You know what the craziest thing was? At our tailgate, we actually met an Ohio State fan. When me, Pigskin Pete, Bobby Durkins, we were all tailgating. We met a guy from there was an Ohio State fan who, I guess he's got a rich family. They traveled to a couple of big games every year. So this guy's been to stadiums, like he's been to Georgia, Alabama, Florida State. He's been everywhere. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to hear a story. It's actually on the Pigskin Pete channel where he interviews that Ohio State fan. And it was pretty cool to hear where he's been. And he's been at like Penn State and everywhere.
Yeah, so I was down in Mississippi at a CBS station for 6 years, and I covered the SEC down there. So I made it to about half the SEC stadiums at that point, plus the Liberty Bowl, plus the Georgia Dome, plus a couple other bowl games. And that's really, other than outside the SEC, I've only been to the Horseshoe. That is pretty much it for me.
I got you. All right. Well, the last thing I did not want to have to do this. Like I did not want to do this.
Okay.
But then all of a sudden I saw somebody in the chat. Okay, so somebody shows up in your chat because I watch almost all of your live shows, and somebody I hadn't seen. I maybe have saw him in the past 2 or 3 weeks here and there. Mr. Reasonable Gump, right?
Yes.
He calls into your show. Usually pretty reasonable guy. So I haven't seen him in the last maybe 3-4 weeks, but I just want to ask him where he's been all this off season. Because I posted on your channel so many times under his comments. I said, where have you been after this 44-16 game? And he was just he was gone off the face of the planet the entire offseason. and now he shows back up, and Alabama's number 1, number 2. So this is a message to him. I'm glad you're back, buddy. We missed you, and I'm glad you're back when your team's doing good. So good for him. I'm proud for him. I just hope he doesn't disappear when LSU beats them next weekend. That's all I hope. Just stick around. Like, we all eat crow. I was here after we lost to Alabama 24-6. Had happened. I was here still eating crow. We weren't the best team in that night. So I like people that stick around after their team loses.
Absolutely.
So I hope he sticks around.
Absolutely. We're just having fun here.
That's what it's all about.
Yep.
You're just being a man about it and take it for what it is. So,
well, I got to say that
I can't thank you enough for all you do for college football, brother. Like, we love you, and we're so blessed to have you around here. And I'll let you get to another caller, but thank you for everything you do.
Appreciate the support and the encouragement there, Prince. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
All right. I would be shocked if Reasonable Gump does not show up and respond, but certainly Reasonable Gump has been here calling a number of times here since the season started. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
You can probably guess who it is.
I actually just made that prediction. Here you are.
Let's go. Let's go ahead and address it. I'm sorry my absence cost this guy. By the way, I don't even know who he is. I seriously don't. But I'm sorry it caused him so much grief. I'm sorry me being deployed to Jordan caused him so much of that. But that happened right at the end of January and pretty much lasted through most of the summer. So while I'm out there in Jordan, I don't have a lot of good internet, and it's kind of iffy if I'm going to be able to see anything. So I think I was actually I got lucky one time during the summer and managed to catch you live streaming. I don't remember I think you were talking about other people's comments, and I called and I started ranting to you about Alabama's ridiculous schedule.
Sure.
And we ended up talking about Notre Dame, I think, at the end of that. But that was like the one lucky time. So yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't be here for people to laugh at me, but I was kind of forced to be on the other side of the world.
So I'll go on the record to
go.
say Reasonable Gump calls me on a regular basis during the college football season. He certainly has explained, and I believe he somewhat explained more in vague terms when he came back to the show a couple months ago that he had been gone due to work and so forth. And you don't need to explain anything here, Reasonable Gump. He's a great caller. We get into some tremendous conversations. Prince 6'1" is a tremendous supporter as well. You just heard the very nice things that he had to say concerning my show and listening to the show on a regular basis. So I don't want to try to moderate or mediate some sort of back and forth between an Alabama and Clemson fan, you two, but I would hope that you guys can just have fun going back and forth, but and not take it to any kind of extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly didn't want to get into anything. Again, I don't even know who the guy is, so I'm not even exactly sure how this happened. Of course, I guess I should feel good that someone at least knows who I am, that they're calling my name out on your show. I kind of take a little pride in that. I've affected someone's life that much, and apparently I've been living rent-free in someone's head for, the last 10 months now. Look at that. I'm moving up in the world, Mark.
Reasonable Gump, there's a lot of examples, Reasonable Gump, of callers who become a staple on a particular show, and then that spins off onto their own show. So this has happened many times throughout broadcasting history.
But anyway, I actually also, I need to call and clear up a few things, although you did put my comment on the screen a little earlier. I saw that. But the first caller, I'm not sure what he was talking about with Florida owning that series. They started really killing this series under Steve Spurrier, of course, in the 90s. But the all-time series, Georgia leads them by, I believe, around 8 games. So, no, this is not atypical for Georgia to be doing well. by the way, I'm going to go on the record saying I actually think Florida's going to win tomorrow. I think. I mean, I know you've done your own videos, so you probably don't want to talk that much about it. But I get the feeling that Florida is trending up, whereas Georgia has seemed to be trending down. If that kind of makes any sense, everything seems to be clicking for Florida, and everything just seems to be not clicking for Georgia. And I just think that might make up for the talent differential. Well, while not huge, it does exist between the two teams.
Yeah, there's still a bit of a talent gap. It's a top 3 to 4 team in regards to talent on the Georgia side, and 10 to 15 on the Florida side. So, but we see top 10 to 15 talent beat top 3 to 5 talent on a fairly regular basis, probably a quarter of the time. So it would not shock me if Florida won the game. And I do agree with your thought about Georgia has pretty much slopped through this season. Anybody that they've played that's decent, they've either just not looked impressive, i.e. Notre Dame, or they've lost. South Carolina, who's the best team that they've beaten? Well, obviously it's Notre Dame, but we've seen what they're capable of or incapable of in regards to playing in Michigan and getting throttled. So Notre Dame's not a great team by any stretch. They're a top 15 team, but they're not elite. And Georgia was decidedly the better team on that night, but they were at home and they really benefited from the loudness of the crowd with 7 false starts. And they only won by a score, and Notre Dame had the ball in plus territory down by 6 in the last minute. So it was still up in the air. And that's Georgia's best win. Other than that, again, their November is going to be interesting with not only Florida, of course, but Kentucky. Well, they already beat Kentucky, Texas A&M, Auburn, and Missouri. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a sidetrack here. Do you think that Michigan Notre Dame game was just an aberration beyond measure? Because I've been unable to explain exactly what happened there. I mean, I'm not that surprised Michigan won, because Notre Dame always loses the big games. You know, that's their MO.
Well, so does Michigan.
But they got yeah, that's true. But they got annihilated in every metric of the game. And could anyone have seen that coming?
I didn't see it coming.
Think Michigan fans would have.
I did not see it coming. I was even impressed with Michigan's effort in the second half the week before against Penn State, considering they laid down against Wisconsin. They could have lost to Army. They've been unimpressive in every game. They have not had an impressive game up until the second half against Penn State, considering they were facing the whiteout and a really good defense and got down 21-0 and were carrying the burden of the narrative of losing to ranked teams and top 10 teams on the road and never winning those games. That they came back was to their credit. I gave them all sorts of credit. And then, though, when they lost on a dropped pass, when they came that close to tying the game, I thought, wow, is this team just going to – now they have nothing to play for, no tangible result of a championship or anything like that. Are they just going to lay down next week against a Notre Dame team that still had everything to play for, that I thought was a little bit better team? So I picked Notre Dame to win, and I didn't even give it a whole lot of thought. Now, like you, did it surprise me that Michigan won? No, the two teams, in terms of talent, are extremely comparable. But I was shocked that it was 45-14, and it wasn't even that close.
No, and the week before, now obviously I was proven completely wrong in this, but I actually thought that was the fact that Michigan almost came back on that game, and that basically the whole season was kind of riding on it, because they're in an Auburn situation right now. There's almost no path to get to a championship game with 2 conference losses.
True.
I thought that with that surge, that last-minute surge, and to still fall short at the very end like that, I thought that was just going to be devastating for their team. And I thought that would have actually played into them performing even worse against Notre Dame than they might have. I was proven completely wrong. Somehow they managed to take that and turn it into a positive effort or effect, rather.
Again,
And
like you, this has been a Michigan outfit that's been mentally weak and has shown themselves not to be a poised team, not to be a mentally tough team. So, like you, I was surprised that they got off the deck, considering how they lost at Penn State, to be demoralized, well, seemingly demoralized in the first quarter, come all the way back, and then blow it, and then have nothing to play for against Notre Dame, nothing tangibly to play for, and to put on that kind of effort. I got to hand it to them. And I certainly cut a video and gave them all sorts of praise, considering what kind of emotional burden they've been carrying around, probably more so than any team in the country in terms of criticism versus expectations. It's got to be weighing on them more than any other. I can't think of another team in the country that has disappointed its alumni and fan base and been criticized like Michigan has, and has had to carry around this "we lose all the big games" narrative.
Well, not the same narrative, because let's face it, this team still doesn't win any big games. But I would say a team that would be up there as far as expectations versus results, and critiques from their fans. You had to throw Tennessee into that jumble. Okay, a lot of Tennessee fans thought 7-5, which, by the way, could still happen. Or a lot of people, even media people, were saying 9-3. Jeremy Pruitt's really turning this thing around, and then they come out and just lay a complete egg to Georgia State right off the bat. Turn around, lose to BYU, get absolutely thrashed by Florida. And then, but all of a sudden, what happened after that? Well, they beat Mississippi State. Mississippi State's terrible, so I didn't really care that much. But when they killed South Carolina last week, South Carolina, the team that beat Georgia in Athens and played pretty evenly against Florida for 3 quarters, well, they thrashed that South Carolina team. By the way, South Carolina still is trying to play for a bowl game. That game meant a lot to them. That would have helped immensely for them to get to 6 wins. So they weren't just sleepwalking. They needed that win. It's those 2 wins last week that I think were the most impactful. I know Ohio State thrashed Wisconsin, and that's big on the national stage. But, I mean, come on. Did anyone really not kind of think that was going to happen? I mean, maybe not to that extent. That was a beatdown of epic proportions. But, I mean, come on. Everyone kind of knew Ohio State's trending that direction. But I think the Michigan win and the Tennessee win both had the largest impacts for their programs and probably for the rest of their season. I think Tennessee is almost guaranteed now to make a bowl game, unless both of these teams prove that, like I said in the beginning of this conversation, that was an aberration.
Well, I made a comment prior to the South Carolina game that, Tennessee, South Carolina, Missouri, and Kentucky are on a certain tier right now in the SEC East. And before you can worry about Florida and Georgia, if you're one of those 4 programs, it's about being better than those 4 teams. So I'm very interested to see who wins those games between those teams. And we've seen already some of those games played, of course. But I, like you, I was very surprised by the Tennessee score against South Carolina. Very surprised. And I watched the condensed version of the game. I watched the 30 or 40-minute version with all the plays and taking out all the dead time, just so I could take it in and see what happened.
I mean, I was kind of unpleasantly surprised. I mean, I'm an Alabama fan. I love it when Tennessee suffers.
Yeah, but you really can't be concerned with Tennessee right now.
Well, it just provides enjoyment where I'm kind of having a lack of it at this point in the season right now. Watching how my team is trending in the wrong direction as well. But well, anyway, Mark, that's about it for me. I'll let some other guys get in here. Just a closing statement. Yeah. Congrats on your national title, Mr. Clemson fan. You guys were the best team in the nation last year, all roided up as you were. No one just working out naturally could compete with that, obviously. But yeah, y'all killed it. We stood absolutely no chance. And maybe if Clemson wins the next 10 in a row against Alabama, you might actually catch us in the all-time series. Thanks, Mark. Have a good night.
Reasonable Gump. Parting shot. It started off gracious and then got a little contested after that. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love each and every day with you, the smart fan, the hardcore fan, and again, the smart fan. And I say that if you're not yet in the smart fan category, then we still welcome you. Stay here. We'll educate you up. We'll get you learned up and ready to debate and discuss college football. Okay. I made $13 off of Amazon. I just got the figures today. I made $13 last month. So I don't think that pays for me even typing out that banner. So do me a favor. And if you're shopping for Christmas, which I'm sure many of you will be, or somebody in your household will be over the next couple months, shopping for Christmas or anything else, grab the link in the description section below. And I'm sorry it's not there right this second. I apologize. It's in every video, but since we're doing a live stream, I'm going to have to paste it in later. But the link in the description section, if you shop on Amazon, you do exactly what you would do otherwise. It's the same shopping experience. You don't have to spend an extra penny. You may see a product there. Forget it. You don't have to buy it. Just keep going. Do your regular shopping at Amazon, but use that link in the description section below, and you will help the channel. You will help us build the channel, and it's so much appreciated. All right, 860-325-3687. You can grab the number. It's on the title, and I will also show it right here. Again, it's 860-325-3687. Georgia, Florida is going to be in my number one game of the day at 3:30. Certainly, I will be doing instant analysis on that game. And game number 2 for me, if I could only see 2 games, would be USC and Oregon. My third choice is probably Washington, Utah. Choice number 4, Florida State, Miami. Although I would really like to see the Virginia, North Carolina game. I'm interested to see that game. It's on the ACC network. I'll watch the replay on YouTube later. And otherwise, who else is playing that's no good games in the Big Ten? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you loud and clear. And
Okay.
will you please, for your own sake, I'm not saying this for my sake or the viewer's sake, McD Sports 4, I'm saying this for your sake. Please do not make any more predictions about Maryland football this year.
Maryland's going to be Michigan today.
Okay. I have been hearing from you, and you know I love the phone calls and I love the discussion with you every time, but you have been nonstop telling me and awaiting that Minnesota game since last season ended and couldn't wait for that Minnesota game 52-10.
I'm going to give credit to Minnesota.
Well, I hope so.
I'm surprised. I was very surprised at 52-10. I didn't think it was going to be anything like that. Did it surprise me that Minnesota won? No, but the score, yes. I think the football gods are with Minnesota. I'm going to tell you why. We had 2 bad balls. Both of them are interceptions. One of them returned for a pick 6. We tipped the ball, and the Minnesota wide receiver dives with the ball and catches it. I just think the football gods are with Minnesota. I mean, so hopefully they have a good season. It looks like they have a 2-game lead in the Big Ten West. So we'll see what happens. They still have Wisconsin, Penn State, and Iowa. I'm going to predict right now that they lose at least one of those. But, I mean, we'll see what happens. But give Minnesota credit. They're a lot better than what I thought they were going to be this year.
You just cited McD Sports for one of my favorite lines in discussing sports. We'll see what happens. Nothing else could be truer than that. We will see what happens.
I mean, I haven't made predictions yet for Minnesota and Penn State since they don't play this weekend, but we'll see what my prediction is next week. But I want to call talking about basically the college football playoffs.
Okay.
Basically, since the first rankings are going to be out this Tuesday at 9 p.m. Basically, I think it's a complete crapshoot right now. If you think about it, I think you have obviously some undefeated teams like Alabama, LSU, Penn State, Ohio State, Clemson, teams like that. But then you have some of these one-loss teams like Florida, Georgia, Oklahoma that still think they have a say. Baylor's undefeated. Minnesota's undefeated. So I think it's a complete crapshoot. If I had to say my top four right now, I think Clemson definitely gets in no matter what. I heard one of your callers earlier, I think it was Andre, he was saying how he was a big concern about that South Carolina game. Clemson fans should not be concerned at all about that South Carolina game. They should be more concerned about the Wake Forest game, actually, in my opinion, than the South Carolina game. You saw South Carolina this past weekend. I mean, they got smoked by a Tennessee team. I know people think they're improving. They're still not that good. So if I'm Clemson, the game I'm concerned is Wake Forest, and you win that game, you're going undefeated. So I think Wake Forest is going to go ahead. Well, not Wake Forest. I think Clemson's going to go ahead and make the playoffs.
Well,
so
let's.
I think that's a team.
I'm going to cut you off here, McD Sports. So let's understand something. When we're talking about teams not named Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama this year, and usually Oklahoma and Georgia, that group of teams, and certainly they have their slip-ups as well. We know that, but they're very rare. If we're not talking about those schools in the last 5 years, we can talk about Wake Forest, we can talk about Oklahoma State, we can talk about South Carolina, we can talk about any mid-tier team that's going to go anywhere from 5-7 to 8-4, and you can cite that South Carolina looked like garbage against Tennessee last week, and they did. Although the game was close, and then they got a blocked punt, and some things happened late in that game to stretch it out to 41-21. It was a 21-17 South Carolina lead anyway. And then Wake Forest, who they play last week, regardless, they're 6-1. They lost to Louisville. They gave up 62 points to Louisville. My point is that you can pluck out games for those marginal teams, and they can go from looking like world beaters to looking like garbage. So I don't necessarily agree with you that you can point to the Wake Forest game as being the toughest game on the Clemson schedule without any question. If South Carolina and Wake Forest stepped on a field tonight, you can't tell me that Wake Forest would definitely win that game. That is a toss-up.
I will give the edge to Wake Forest personally, but that's just me.
The edge, maybe.
But, I mean, I don't think Clemson has anything to be concerned about, so that's why I think they're getting in. The other team that I think is definitely going to get in no matter what is LSU. I look at LSU, outside of the Alabama game, I mean, they're going to beat Texas A&M in my opinion, probably by 2 touchdowns. They have Ole Miss, and they have someone else on their schedule, Arkansas on their schedule, and then they might even have a nobody on their schedule. But LSU, in my opinion, I think definitely makes the playoffs. Even with a loss to Alabama, I think they make it. As long as that loss is close, it cannot be like it was last year, 29-0. So I think that's the team, the second team that I think definitely gets in. Outside of that, though, I think it's a crapshoot. I don't think Alabama's a guarantee because I think Alabama might lose to Auburn, which in my opinion is the best 2-loss team in the country. You look at any team in the Big Ten, Penn State and Ohio State are still going to play each other. Minnesota, as I said, they have a few games coming up. I think Baylor is going to lose a game somewhere. I think Oklahoma is going to lose a second game this year. Florida and Georgia, one of those two teams are going to be canceled out this weekend, or rather today, And whoever does make it to the SEC championship game, they win, they'll get in if it's Georgia or Florida. But if it's but they have two losses, they're not getting in. I look at the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is interesting because I think a one-loss Pac-12 team can get in over a one-loss Big 12 team. Personally, what do you think about that?
A one-loss Pac-12 over the one-loss Big 12?
Correct.
So it depends on who your teams are and how they got to this place. So obviously it's going to be Utah or Oregon, and it's going to be Oklahoma or Baylor that you're talking about. Well,
Correct.
Oregon in that scenario has the advantage because they played Auburn. So they've got the best win or the best loss, the most quality loss on the table. They played the toughest non-conference game of the four by far. And most likely they're going to play the most legitimate championship game because I'm looking at the Big 12. I just don't see Baylor holding up. They may make the Big 12 championship game, but in terms of being an undefeated or one-loss team, I wouldn't be shocked if Baylor showed up at that game 9-2 or 10-2 in the Big 12 championship game. So there's more. It's more likely that the Pac-12 will have more top-end teams, two top-end teams playing in the Pac-12 championship game, more so than the Big 12. So I'll agree with you.
I think Oklahoma's going to lose another game this year, honestly. I think that game's going to be the final game of the season against Oklahoma State in Stillwater. I know Oklahoma State has been kind of an up-and-down team this year, but they've been one of the better teams, in my opinion, in the Big 12. So I think the Big 12 itself is going to probably pit up a one-loss Baylor team and a two-loss Oklahoma team in the championship. And probably Oklahoma wins it, and it'll cancel out the Big 12 altogether. But the Pac-12 makes me very interested because I think a one-loss Oregon team could get in over a one-loss Minnesota team. I think Oregon could possibly maybe even get in over a one-loss Georgia team as well. Especially if Georgia loses to Auburn.
Well, Georgia's already lost. They can't lose again.
True, yeah. True, that kind of kills that point. So maybe not. But I think Minnesota, I know you said you'll be arguing if a 12-1 Minnesota team doesn't get into the playoffs over teams that have preseason recognition. I'll be fine with a 12-1 team, a 12-1 Minnesota team, not getting in if it's a one-loss SEC champion or undefeated SEC champion, a 11-1 LSU or Alabama, then a one-loss Ohio State and a one-loss Oregon, and you have Minnesota at 5.
Well, wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. So if Minnesota is the Big Ten champion, they will have beaten Ohio State, correct?
No, if Minnesota's just a one-loss team, if Minnesota goes into the championship game undefeated.
Oh, if they've lost the Big Ten championship game, then the stakes are the cards are off the table. I'm not necessarily backing a Minnesota team to make the playoffs if they lost the Big Ten championship game. But if they are the Big Ten champions with one loss, I want to hear the scenario that should leave them out of the playoffs because I'm not coming up with one. I'm coming up with ones that the committee will. I'm coming up with ones that the committee will try to sell, but legitimate ones. If they come out of this season with one loss and a Big Ten championship against the likes of Wisconsin, Iowa, Penn State, Ohio State, and they get left out of the playoff after Alabama beats what? Duke, Auburn, who? Then that's just then I will do everything. I will tear this set down. I will go nuts if Minnesota doesn't make the playoff.
I have one scenario that I think it could happen. A one-loss Minnesota champion.
Okay.
I have one scenario, and that scenario is obviously the SEC champion gets in, even with one loss. Then you sit out there and have Ohio State get in with one loss. Then you have Oregon get in with one loss, and then you have that 11-1 LSU team that loses a close game to Alabama and gets left out of the SEC championship game. It can happen if Alabama beats LSU.
Oh, I'm not saying it could happen. I didn't say that it could not happen. I'm saying that it shouldn't happen. The committee has made stupid decisions in the past. They will make more decisions that are idiotic and that serve other purposes. I have no doubt about that. The committee has proven to be inconsistent and unreliable, and they do have an impossible job. I've said that since day one. 5 conferences, 4 spots. It makes no sense. But they are not consistent in their criteria. So I'm not saying they're not capable of making stupid decisions. They will continue to make stupid decisions. Yes. That I know.
I'll give you another scenario that leaves a Big Ten championship Minnesota team out as well.
Okay.
That undefeated Clemson. You have whoever wins the SEC championship. You have Ohio State. And then once again, you either have that 11-1 LSU team that loses to Alabama, or a 12-1 Oregon team that wins the Pac-12.
Ohio State's going to get in with a loss to Minnesota over Minnesota.
Everybody, I think, thinks that Ohio State is better than Minnesota.
Oh, everybody on earth, PJ Fleck thinks that. But if Minnesota beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and only has 1 loss, then they better get into the playoff. That would be the most insane scenario you've come up with. A day after Minnesota beats Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game and they both have 1 loss, the committee's going to put Ohio State in over Minnesota.
I'm going to tell you why they do it. I'm going to tell you why the committee does it. Because of the non-con schedule of Cincinnati.
What?
And,
Cincinnati?
Because Ohio State has that winning in Cincinnati. I'm telling you, this committee is going to screw it up. I'm just giving you some.
That's not going to happen. They didn't beat Georgia. They didn't beat Oregon. They beat Cincinnati.
Oh yeah, but Cincinnati right now is ranked what, number 15 or something like that.
Okay.
Watch them up that way. Watch them rank Cincinnati higher than it should be, just to up Ohio State's resume.
That's not going to happen.
Just like they did with some group of 5 opponents that Alabama beat up pretty bad.
12 hours after the Big Ten championship game is over, the committee is not going to announce that they've selected Ohio State to go to the playoff over Minnesota after Minnesota just beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and they both have 1 loss.
Mark, I'm just giving you scenarios. I agree with everything you're saying. I think if a 12-1 Minnesota Big Ten champion of Ohio State, I think they should get in. But, I mean, I'm telling you, this committee, they're going to sit up there and sit there and say, well, Minnesota earlier in the season, they already beat Georgia Southern. And by the way, that Georgia Southern win for Minnesota is looking a lot better right now. They barely beat South Dakota State. They barely beat Fresno State. So all I'm trying to say is this committee is going to make some dumb decisions. It's going to be Clemson. I think Clemson and LSU gets in no matter what. I think it's just a crapshoot from there. I don't think any Big 12 team gets in. I think I can make a strong argument for Oregon. I even think I can make a strong argument for Utah because Utah's loss, I don't think is a terrible loss. But overall, I'm telling you, if it comes down to a 12-1 Minnesota Big Ten champion and a 12-1 Ohio State team that lost to Minnesota in the Big Ten, it would not surprise me if that committee decides to go in there and piss Ohio State in over Minnesota because of name recognition, and they think that Ohio State has a better resume. And I disagree with it as much as you do, but the committee is basically they basically want big names, and it's disgusting. But I'm very interested to see how much they rank some of these teams in their rankings here on Tuesday.
All right, McD, thanks so much for the call. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Go Terps.
Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Somebody was just calling in, and so just redial 860-325-3687. So for the record, for everyone who understands that I did rant and rave about Ohio State as a 2017 Big Ten champion being left out with a better resume than Alabama, let's also call it straight. I ranted and raved about Penn State being left out in 2016 in favor of Ohio State. So let's be fair there and understand what my argument was both times. It wasn't pro-Ohio State both times. It was pro-Penn State over Ohio State. It was pro-Ohio State in 2017 over Alabama. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Troy.
Hey, Troy. How are you?
Oh my God, I'm doing great. I just wanted to call in and tell you how much I love balls. I love soccer balls, tennis balls, baseball. I just love.
Okay. You wonder what's kind of life some people have. It's not a very interesting one, apparently. My pictures are crooked. Yeah, well, if Minnesota gets left out of the playoff at 12-1 with a Big Ten championship win, then I'm going to knock them down anyway. All right. All right. I'm going to go through the schedule here briefly. Let's see at least what I'm going to watch and keep an eye on, and I hope I'm going to get to a lot of analysis tomorrow. That's my aim. My boy will be over at some point, and we'll enjoy some football and some fellowship. So we've got a Baylor win over West Virginia last night, 17-14, and App State, if you missed it, lost to Georgia Southern 24-21. Those were our Thursday night scores, and in a huge affair in Bristol, or I should say Storrs, Connecticut tonight, Navy throttled UConn 56-10. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
My name's Kalijah.
Hey, Kalijah, how are you?
I'm all right, man. Look, I was watching the game last night. I tell you right now, I got that thing went in, end zone. That touchdown right there. I tell you something right now. That's pretty good. I'll tell you right now, end zone, touchdown, forward pass, Cam Newton. Jesus, man. Right?
Awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. All right. They're coming out of the woodwork. All right. At noon, McD Sports 4 is calling for a Maryland upset at home against Michigan. That game's on ABC at noon. Wake Forest, NC State. Wake about a 6 to 7 point favorite at home against NC State. We got UCF at Houston or hosting Houston. Let's get it straight, Mark. ESPN 2 at noon. Nebraska Purdue on Fox at noon. BC Syracuse on the ACC network. And those are the noon games. So my viewing pleasure at noon is most likely going to be, I think, the most competitive game. The game I'm going to watch is going to be NC State and Wake, first and foremost. I'll put a backup on Maryland, Michigan, and also on my third screen, I got to go Nebraska, Purdue. I'm going to go that route.
The call will start at the beat.
Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
My name is Julian.
Julian, how are you?
I'm doing pretty all right. So I was watching the game, the other night, Red Sox versus the Lakers, and at Lake Stadium.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Made a hole in one. That was terrific. Perfect hole in one.
Awesome.
Knockout.
Again, man, read a book. You can improve yourself. Do a little yoga. Do some reading. Repaint the house. There's a lot of productive things you could be doing in life. A lot of things for self-improvement. Or maybe you could go help out at a food kitchen or something. There are a lot of good things that you could be doing in life. A lot of productive things that would make you feel better about yourself than being a complete ass. All right. Let's go to the Notre Dame Virginia Tech game at 2:30. Not real interesting there. You would think that the Irish would bounce back at home. 3:30 on FS1 is Kansas hosting Kansas State. Look out for the possible upset. Also at 3:30, Arkansas State, Louisiana Monroe, ESPNU. We've, of course, got the Florida State-Miami game coming up at 3:30 as well. Somebody save me, a decent caller maybe, or this might be the last caller of the night. Mark Rogers, TV, the voice of college football. Who do we have on the line?
Hello.
Yeah, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. This is Prince 6'1" again, buddy.
Hey, what's going on, man?
I'm honestly here to ask you questions. What do you think about this Florida Georgia game, and who would you take at 6.5? I believe the spread is.
Well, I got a little deal where I've got my picks on my link there in the description section, Voice of College Football Community.
Right,
so,
right.
Georgia and
All right,
Florida.
You can't say so.
Well, I would rather not, because we're trying to encourage. I would rather be doing this. The aim is to do this full time, all the time, full throttle, and pay myself. So we're working on that. So I do think that it's a bit of a toss up, and I do think that Georgia's got a little bit better talent, but I think Florida's playing better football right now. I think it's a really good game, and I think that Florida, with Trask slinging the ball, they seem to be on the same page, more so than Jake Fromm and his receivers. But again, I've seen Georgia play Notre Dame. I saw that entire game. I saw the entire South Carolina game. Other than that, I've seen bits and pieces. Florida, I saw the LSU game. I saw the Auburn game. I saw the Miami game. And Florida's got a lot of really good players coming back, full strength this week. Jabari Zuniga's back. Greenard's back and ready to go. So, man, I think Florida's defense is playing better.
All right, you don't have to tell me this.
I like Trask.
Who do you have straight up? Who do you like straight up?
Well, I'm gonna. Well, please don't risk your own money based on my predictions. Please don't put that kind of pressure on me.
I won't. But who do you think straight up? You don't have to tell me the spread. Just tell me straight
Well,
up.
that may give depending on who I selected, that may give away the spread as well, right?
Well, hey, 6.5 though. 6.5.
Sure, but if I pick a particular team, like let's say if I picked Florida to win, then that's also telling you what I picked against the spread, right?
All right. No, you're right. You said enough. All right. As far as who else is going this weekend, Miami, Florida State.
Yeah.
Do you have a spread on that too?
Oh yeah, I picked the game. I definitely picked the game in that one.
What are your thoughts on that game? Because that I have no idea. Like, I don't know what Florida State team is going to show up there. You never do.
Well, I would say actually, I think Miami's a little bit more inconsistent week to week. Florida State's getting better. They started off horribly this year, and if you throw out the Clemson game as an outlier where they just got throttled against a much better team,
Right.
they've progressively gotten better. For the most part, they whipped Syracuse, which they should. But the 4 to 5 weeks before that, they played Wake really close. They lost by 2 points. They had red zone issues in that game. Cam Akers is a stud. I've watched every Florida State game since about game 2 or 3. I've watched most of them on the the condensed version of the game. The Virginia game, they had the ball inside the 5 to try to punch it in to tie the game. They beat NC State comfortably. They beat Louisville pretty comfortably in the fourth quarter. Whereas Miami, you talk about up and down. They beat Virginia. They looked awful against Virginia Tech. Went down 28-0. Tied it at 35. Gave up a late drive to lose 42-35. Then boom, the next week they come back and beat who most of us think is the best team in the division, Virginia. Then boom, they plummet back down to earth and they lose to a horrible Georgia Tech team the next week. And then boom, last week they come back and who'd they beat last week? I can't. It's even off my radar. They beat somebody last week. They beat Pitt. They went up to Pitt. So there's 4 consecutive weeks of up and down, up and down, up and down out of Miami. I think they've got a better defense. Miami's got a better defense.
Yeah.
I tend to like that part of it right there.
Yeah, defense wins ball games. That's for sure. Okay. I got kind of a hot take for you. I haven't heard anybody talk about is all right. So this SMU team, what a lot of people don't realize is Chad Morris was there 2 years ago?
Yeah. 17.
So a lot of these players that are on SMU were guys that Chad Morris recruited and coached up, and they're still using the same philosophies. Much similar to the way in 2016, a lot of people don't realize Chad Morris recruited Deshaun Watson and a lot of our offense that year. And when Chad Morris left, we had Tony Scott, Scott and Elliott took over our offense, using the same exact Chad Morris schemes that we still use today. And he has ever been responsible for that 2016 championship as anyone, when he left. So, do you think there's a bit of a lag going on? There was definitely a lag as far as Clemson fans are concerned. Chad Morris has every bit to do with that 2016 national championship. He's the guy who recruited Deshaun, recruited all these amazing offensive players we had. Then he left to this thing. Now he left to Arkansas, and now SMU has a lag, and they're doing amazing for what they're capable of. So, do you think Arkansas needs to be patient with Chad Morris and actually let him get his guys in and do his thing? I think so, but that's just based. If you look at the history, the arrow is pointing the right direction.
So
what are your thoughts on that?
So you make a really good point about the recruiting of Chad Morris and then it taking effect after he left. Case in point, yes, you just outlined it for it. It makes total sense what you just outlined. I'm also thinking in his defense about the personnel that Arkansas recruited under Brett Bielema being tight end and fullback heavy, and him playing a completely different, updated, high tempo, spread it out offense. And so him having to turn over the roster, or at least 4 to 8 positions on offense that are largely unproductive for him in regards to the fullbacks and the tight ends. So he's got to get his players in there. I think any coach has to get their players in before we can evaluate them.
He's had, right?
Yes.
So, I think Arkansas fans who are raising hell right now, I think they really need to be patient with this guy. I've been a Chad Morris fan ever since he's come to Clemson because he literally turned our program around on the offense. What we're doing today, we're running the Chad Morris offense, and we're just having the two disciples that were under him, they're running what he did.
I hear you. I think that any coach, unless there are extreme outlier cases of coaches coming in and being obviously incapable and in over their heads, but generally you've got to allow the coach to come in and establish his own culture, terminology, get his own staffs in place, The players typically take to the coaching much better the second year because they built a relationship with their position coaches. They understand what the scheme is, the terminology, and they've gone through a full cycle of spring and summer workouts, the summer individual workouts, the spring workouts with the team. The year two, I think, is especially for a really bad program. Year one is almost like year zero, like just gut it and look at Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia. He came in, Virginia was worse his first year. They went 2-10. Has Bronco Mendenhall been a good hire for Virginia? Absolutely.
Agreed. And it's almost, from my perspective, it seems like offensive coaches are the guys to hire nowadays. You look at Lincoln Riley. You look at offensive coaches are absolutely the guys. It's not to hire as a head coach. Everybody's all about the OC nowadays. I mean, you look at Clemson or Alabama, LSU. I mean, their OCs nowadays are more than compared to 10 years ago. It was all about defense, and now it's all about their OCs.
Yeah, so you got Lincoln Riley. You've got Ryan Day at Ohio State. Who are some other top guys that have been hired recently?
We're talking about this LSU Alabama game next week. I mean, this game 10 years ago, we're talking about like 14-17 wins the game, and nowadays it's going to be, in the 30s and 40s.
Yep, I hear you. I'm just catching up with this live chat. All sorts of discontent in the live chat tonight.
Yeah, they're a little bit wild. They always do. The trolls come out. That's all. It's just a bunch of trolls. But on real football talk. I had to throw that out there. I don't know how many Arkansas fans that you guys have, but I would highly recommend. They give Chad Morris. I mean, it took Dabo Swinney 6-7 years to start winning. I'm not gonna lie. I was one of those guys that we lost to Carolina 5 years in a row. I was questioning Dabo Swinney, and we ended up giving him time, and it took him time to turn around. And it's gonna definitely take Arkansas a lot of time to turn around because they're in arguably the toughest division in all of football. But I think if anybody knows an offense, it's Chad Morris. Like that, everything that Clemson has nowadays are OCs, Tony Elliott and Jeff Scott. They learned under Chad Morris, and his offense, man, is incredible, absolutely incredible. When he gets the players in Arkansas, it's going to be a problem.
All right, Prince. We shall wait and see.
Yep, we shall see. We shall see, Mark. Appreciate all you do, brother.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a good night. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, as we continue to run it down on a Week 10 schedule. Again, at 3:30, my game is Georgia, Florida. If I can only watch one game tomorrow, that's the game. Miami, Florida State's going to be on my second screen. You got Oklahoma State hosting TCU. That's most likely going to be my third game. And then the primetime schedule is awful, unfortunately. The Memphis SMU game, that's the ABC primetime game. So I'll watch that game. USC, Oregon, that's going to be my game at 8 o'clock. No question about that. 8 o'clock Eastern time, USC and Oregon. Oregon, of course, playing for a college football playoff appearance, potentially, and USC still in the mix as the Pac-12 South team that controls its own destiny with a head-to-head against Utah. Auburn, Ole Miss should be a blowout most likely. And then late night, we've got, unfortunately, no big Pac-12 games. Usually there's a Pac-12 game to gain our attention. Well, that comes at 4 o'clock with Washington, Utah. I missed that one. So in a perfect world, what games do I get to tomorrow for instant analysis? I would love to deliver instant analysis. Michigan fans have been all over me the last few weeks in a good way, meaning watching a ton of videos, getting me 8,000 to 10,000 views on video. So Michigan, I will try to lock in on Michigan, Maryland, and get you an instant analysis on that game. And then, of course, Georgia, Florida is going to be the primary game of the day that I will focus on, getting some instant analysis out on Georgia, Florida, Florida State, Miami, of course, as we've got a lot of Noles and Canes fans. And Utah, Washington, USC, Oregon is a priority. And those who do the games first and foremost, and then anything else I pick up. North Carolina, Virginia, probably when the dust settles tomorrow, even though I can't see that game live. I'll catch it in the condensed version because I'm fascinated to see North Carolina, Virginia, and the team that wins is going to have a huge upper hand in the ACC Coastal Division. Consider that North Carolina right now is 3-2 in the ACC, and they lost by 1 point against Clemson with a 2-point conversion failure at the end of the game, and lost in 6 overtimes to Virginia Tech. Otherwise, North Carolina that close to being 5-0 in the ACC. That close. All right, I will address the rest of the comments in the live chat before I sign off to make sure I don't miss anything. But if you've written anything, keep in mind, my apologies here. So you got to keep in mind the application for these live streams in which I'm using what you see here with the graphics and everything, in which I can pull the comments from YouTube and put them on the screen. I'm using an application called StreamYard. So if I pull a comment to the screen, if I'm at a certain place in the live chat, I can only go so far back, like 10 comments. So sometimes I gain a lot of criticism for not going back and grabbing other comments. I can't. So please understand that. I'm not ignoring your comments. The comments I bring to the screen, I try to bring every comment to the screen unless I see somebody says something out of line, or if it doesn't make sense because they're talking to somebody else in the chat, and that's what the chat's for. That's great. But I'm going to pull the comments to the screen that kind of apply to everything in college football and apply to the people watching in general. All right. Let me go through it. So keep that in mind in terms of the comments that I pull to the screen. Yeah, I'm about done for tonight, I think. You guys have been great, as usual. And what I was starting to say is basically, if there's something you want me to see in regards to a comment or a question, please grab it in the live chat, copy and paste it, bring it to the comment section of any video. There you go. Put it in there, and I'll get to it as soon as possible. I try to get to all the comments in some way, shape, or fashion. What I should be doing, they say all the big YouTubers do a comments reacts video. That's what I should do on a more regular basis to keep up with all the comments. So I cannot keep up with all the comments, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So keep the comments coming. I get to as many as possible. My Week 10 college football predictions and my weekly predictions available in the comment section of any of the videos, the description section down below, I should say, the description section, first link, Voice of College Football Community, get my picks. But guys, it's about so much more than that. It's not about my predictions. I'm not a handicapper. I'm not a professional. I'm not an odds maker, but I do watch a lot of college football, and I've been watching for a long time, and I predict the games pretty darn well. 58% against the spread, and that's not even a great year for me. 58% against the spread. That's not the draw here, though. I would love for all of you to join the community. It costs you a cup of coffee a month, and that's because we need to charge over there because they make us on Patreon. So understand the platform. Also understand that what we're trying to do. So if you understand the vision of what we're trying to do, it makes sense. And it's very minimal. You give a tiny bit, and it multiplies by thousands, by the thousands. And what I am providing there that I would love to get ramped up, is our Voice of College Football Community, in which we provide for you an exclusive live stream every week in which you come on like you see the guests coming on. We've done this about 8 times in which we bring viewers on and we kick around college football in an open forum. And that was suggested by you. About 25 of you suggested that, and I thought it was a great idea. So I said, yeah, let's do that. We'll do one exclusive live stream each week by request. So a few people have complained and said, you're not doing those exclusive live streams. That's because nobody's requested them. It's by request. I'm not just going to do a live stream and sit here and talk to nobody. By request, an exclusive live stream over on Patreon, the Voice of College Football Community. So get on over there and request your live stream, and we'll get other folks on, and we'll do a forum with all of you, and we'll kick around college football. And so that's available there, and in discussion, more discussion, and anything else that you recommend or request here at Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. So we will see you throughout the day on Saturday. Enjoy your week 10, and we will see you soon. Anything else in the live chat? The original American. I understand your point, but it's easily debated, but not tonight. We'll see you soon.